I was getting to kind of lean into a style that in most situations I would walk into a room and say to a producer, hey, I want to make like a very futuristic pop nu metal song, and they would look at me and be like, you have to go home.
Hi, I'm Hannah from NME, and today I'm joined by Halsey for In Conversation. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, we're in London today.
We are.
How's it been treating you?
It's been awesome. I love being here. I've been coming for so long. I feel like it's gotten to the point for me where it's less of a touristy visit. Like, it's kind of developed into a different kind of positive experience where it's less of like the enamor of being someone new and more like being somewhere like familiar.
Yeah.
You know, where you're like, I have places I'm excited to check out, like my spots and like things I want to do and like a coffee shop I like and like all that stuff. You know what I mean? So it feels like comfy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you are in the UK at the moment because you're headlining Reading and Leeds.
I know, I can't believe it.
So exciting.
Crazy.
How have you been preparing?
Ooh, well, I've been preparing because I just finished a US tour. So, you know, I was doing shows every night on that tour, and it could not have been more perfect timing, I don't think, because the way this tour came together, like my performance style has evolved into a space that I think is really just kind of true to the sentiment of what Reading and Leeds are as festivals, you know? And I think I have a strong memory, a strong sensory identity for every tour that I've done, the way that what it represents, the way it evolves. And this one has kind of just been pure, like fun, unbridled rage, which is so great. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to bringing it to that stage and getting to engage with it with a UK audience. Because I always say like UK audiences gig I feel like in the UK gigging is an action.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US a show is like something you go to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the UK, the audience, they understand they're part of the show too, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm excited.
Absolutely. Because I was going to say, in some ways, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power feels like the perfect Reading album. So it kind of goes back to like the old school rock, but also looks to the future with like kind of what the lineup looks like now and what young people are listening to now.
Yeah.
Did that help when you were kind of building the set list for it?
Yeah, it definitely did. It was, you know, it's tough, I think, sometimes, like, it's very rare that an artist wants to like load their set with a lot of their new material. You know, you get kind of nervous or insecure. You want to include some of the older stuff. Like, what if people haven't really heard the new album? And I think that was kind of the case for this record for me, especially because, you know, I don't think it was as much of a forced discovery album as some of my records that came just before it were. I think it was a bit more like my debut, where it was like people kind of discovered it organically, and a lot of people found it who maybe didn't think they would like my music before they listened to this album. So that makes it, you know, kind of, it's tough because on one hand I'm like, I want to play every single song on this album, but then, you know, you still, as all artists do, you get those moments of insecurity where you're like, well, I have to play without me. If I don't play without me, no one's going to know who I am. They're going to spend the whole set not knowing who's on stage, and then when I play without me, they're going to go, oh, it's that girl, I know this song, which is obviously like a thing I make up in my head, you know what I mean? But so I've definitely been loading it with a ton of those rock-leaning songs, and you know, as I have grown and matured as an artist, I think quite a bit about how my live show feels when I'm in the studio writing records. When I wrote Badlands, I was 19. I had never played a real concert before. So I was very surprised when I got on stage to play my album and realized I wrote no songs people could move to. And so then I started changing things very promptly after that.
Just a little slow interpretive dance.
Oh my gosh, just mid-tempo. Everyone's sad, you know, which is great. Some people do come to my show to be sad, but some people also come because they have, you know, some rage.
And it's going to be a year since the album came out. What are you doing to celebrate?
My gosh. Well, it's funny because the album is so like inherently attached to my child, you know what I mean? Because I was pregnant, and it came out shortly after I had given birth to my son. And, you know, I just celebrated his first birthday. I just celebrated his first birthday. Did you hear the way I just said that? He just celebrated his first, to me it was a celebration. I was like, I survived a year. you know, so it's really cool to like look at how my life has changed since like the fear that I was experiencing before I was about to release that record, because of the change in my sound, because I was about to, you know, give birth. That's like a scary thing to do also. And then, you know, to kind of look at where I am, and I'm like, okay, I put out an album that wasn't a traditional pop record, and nobody died. Everything was fine. I didn't fall off the face of the earth. Everything didn't catch on fire. In fact, a lot of wonderful things happened, and you know, it was experienced by so many people in such an amazing way. And now I have a 1-year-old, you know? So like those things coming together and giving me that sense of like peace, I think is really special. So I want to try to give my fans like a little bit of an inside look on how I don't want to use the word recovered, because I don't think that there was necessarily things to recover from, but I guess the sense of perspective that I have now since releasing it. A lot of my songs are about things that are like troubling or dark or things that I'm struggling with. So I think it's always important to follow up so that for people who are listening, they know that it does improve and it gets better. Or sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay too. Just, you know, do it at your own pace, you know? A couple songs we'll be putting out, some demos, early iterations of the record, and yeah, just hopefully just like some exciting conversations. I haven't been on social media in a while.
Amazing. And you mentioned there you kind of delved into this rockier palette.
Yeah.
Would you do that again? Or would you are there other genres you'd like to go into?
I would like to. I very much would like to, because I think it's given me like a new sense of, it's like energized me in a way with my live show. And I feel like I'm kind of embracing a part of my artistry that's always been there, but I haven't always been able to like articulate. I think for a long time I've associated rock with angst and angst with youth, you know? So like, I guess when I was making this record, I was 26 and I was like pregnant, I was about to become a mom, and I was mourning a lot of like, you know, losing my youth, and almost thinking to myself, that's kind of passed me by. I've missed the boat on getting to make a record like this. You know, like, am I entitled to angst? And at first I was like, the answer is no. Like, you're about to become somebody's mother. You can't be angsty. You need to have everything under control. And then I realized, you know, that with maturation and with, you know, learning more about the world and learning more about yourself, along with that comes a tremendous amount of angst. And I can continue to grow, you know, into my 30s, my 40s, and still have rock music that is accessible to me. You know what I mean? And like have a narrative and a story to tell through rock that's important or that's meaningful, I guess, in some way. With that being said, I also get really impatient and like antsy sometimes with genre. And I feel like everyone has made a terrible mistake by letting me just kind of make whatever music I want, because now I just can't see an end to it, where I just want to try everything and do everything. And I think with the place I'm at in my life now, if I did make another rock album soon, I think it would probably be a bit more of like a live, organic rock album, something that's maybe a bit more acoustic-y, a little more analog, you know, kind of dive into that sound. Just go Stevie Nicks on them, you know, something like that. I don't know.
And kind of on the rock stuff, you have worked with British rock titans, Bring Me the Horizon, several times, fellow Reading headliners, of course, Reading Leeds, I should say. Would you do it again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I'd work with Bring Me Again in a heartbeat. They're such great guys. You know, it's so funny. We spent a couple days in the studio together, actually, and we made a couple songs. And you just, like, wouldn't believe the range of music that we were making. Like, we were in the studio, and, like, Jordan was, like, coaching me through doing these, like, Justin Timberlake harmonies, like, on a record. And I was like, dude, what? Like, how? What do you mean? And he's like, I love music like this. And so they were having a lot of fun with me, I think, because we were kind of getting to write stuff together that, you know, Ollie wouldn't necessarily sing, or as Jordan was teasing him, he couldn't sing. And like, you know, and then I was getting to kind of lean into a style that in most situations I would walk into a room and say to a producer, hey, I want to make like a very futuristic pop nu metal song, and they would look at me and be like, you have to go home. Whereas like, you know, the Bring Me guys were like, let's do it, let's go, you know? And they coached me through my first time like screaming on a record, which was really fun. You can't ask for like a better person to coach you through that. Now I do it in the show live every night, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And kind of on the show, on these festival dates, you've been covering Kate Bush, Ring Up the Hill. Why did you decide that was the song to cover in your set?
I've obviously been so influenced by Kate Bush. Like, I feel like anyone who's spent more than 10 minutes with my music would know that. It's like written all over it, that there's, you know, there's a genesis there from like the music that she was making and, you know, to the music that I make today. And I just really admire her fearlessness and like, just also just her weirdness, just weird. Like that's it. Like it doesn't, there's no other word for it than just like weird. I love that. Like there's inflections in her voice. There's like phrases that she uses in songwriting that, you know, could be put in a more simple way and she chooses not to. She chooses to go for the like grandiose expression of it, which like I do very often in my writing too. I know I have a lot of songs that people would listen to and be like, oh, like, you know, she could have said this in like a simpler way. Like she thinks she's so smart. And I'm like, well, I wanted to say it that way. It deserves it. It's cinematic, it's poetic, you know? And when the song started kind of having a bit of a resurgence, I was excited because it's a song that I had wanted to cover. And now I had a really good reason to, because my audience would react to it and respond to it and know it. And I've performed it so many times now that when I hear it, I was having dinner with my manager the other night and the DJ dropped Running Up That Hill. And my body responded viscerally as if they had played one of my songs. Because I feel so attached to it now that like it started playing and you're just like, ding, 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 ding. And I was like, oh shit, they're playing Halsey. And then I was like, oh wait, no, they're not. That's Kate Bush, oh my God. You know, so it's like, it's become a part of me now, I guess. Yeah.
Did you watch Strange Things?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, love it.
And you've had your own new song come out recently too.
Yeah.
So good. Tell me about writing that one.
You know, that was like a really interesting time for me because I had just come off the road the metaphorical road, the path of making an album with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And in that process had kind of, you know, I had sort of condemned things about myself as an artist, sort of exiled things about being a pop musician in that process, you know, and like committed myself to a process that was very fearless and avant-garde. And, you know, when I first sat with So Good and was like, wow, this is, oh God, I really got to put this out. This is a really good song. I kind of had that moment where I was like, ugh, who am I going to be letting down by making another pop song? You know what I mean? Does this make me a fraud? Am I evolving too quickly? Is this a step backwards for me? And then I was kind of like, at the root of it, what really did it for me was listening to it as a demo, where it was just the vocal and just the piano.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, no, this is a song that's just storytelling. You know, from top to bottom, it's essentially just storytelling. And at the end of the day, like when you strip away all the production and like the fancy guest producers and the visuals and all that stuff, at the end of the day, my job is to be a storyteller. And I did that job with So Good. And so I was like, gotta put it out, you know?
And obviously there's a bit of a push to put it out there. I guess that's why it's so important to you to put it out there. Yeah,
I mean, that was a really interesting situation for me because I think it showed me, you know, that no amount of experience or time or like longevity in this industry makes you invincible to trends. You know what I mean? Like all of us are at times like susceptible to just how fast like culture is changing. And it was a reminder that I can wake up any day and people might be like, Halsey's not it anymore, you know? She's not it. And then I have to make a choice that's like, am I going to change to be heard and to have my art experienced, or do I accept that the culture has changed and I just continue to be me and continue to, you know, do what I've done even though there's not really a receptacle for it in the zeitgeist anymore. And I don't know the answer to that, honestly. It could be one, it could be the other, it could be some sort of intersection between both. But yeah, it was definitely a wake-up call. It was really interesting, you know?
I think it sparked a really big conversation about this kind of marketing with...
Which I was not expecting, by the way. Yeah. Because there was like all these like news headlines and stuff, and I was like, Oh my gosh, my little brother, he works at Atlantic Records, and which as you can imagine, is probably a very interesting, there's very interesting conversations happening in our home life. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, people were coming up to me being like, dude, why does your sister have to like open her big mouth? And he's like, bro, I'm like an intern. My sister's Halsey, like go be mad at her, like not me. And then there were other people who were coming up to him or coming up to me being like, I'm really glad this conversation's being had because my artists are fed up with it too. And but by that same token, you know what I mean? Like I took an artist out on tour in the US called Abby Roberts. Okay. Yeah, she's amazing. She's also from Leeds. She's playing the festival. It's really exciting. I'm really, really excited for her. But she got most of her start on TikTok. And she's brilliant. She's amazing at it. She was at my house. I was like, you have to teach me how to use this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And she's just so good at using it as a platform. And it reminded me quite a bit of kind of how I started on Tumblr. Using Tumblr as like a way of cultivating like a very specific creative brand, and then once that brand is established, like putting out music. And I see the way that she's doing it, and I think it's a brilliant tool for newer artists.
And one thing I want to ask you about as well is you won the Innovation Award at the Band Lab NME Awards in 2022. Firstly, what does a title like that mean to you?
I think that the correct answer would be like, oh, it's like means so much, and like but like the honest answer is it felt awesome. Like artists aren't supposed to admit that they want people to think that they're exciting or unique or interesting. You're supposed to be like, I don't care what people think as long as I like it. That's not true. When you take a risk on something like I did with my last album, like you're kind of waiting with bated breath that people are going to acknowledge that risk and they're going to think that it's cool. So for that to be acknowledged, with an award that is surmised by the phrase innovation, you know what I mean? That's kind of what you're hoping for, is that someone's gonna say like, at this stage in my career, 8, 9, 10 years into it, I don't even know, I still have the ability to transform and to do so in a way that connects. Because I can innovate all I want, but if people don't see that innovation or it doesn't connect, then I'm doing nothing, So that was really, it was really like affirming and validating. And especially so coming from, a UK-based entity. Because to be quite transparent, I care very much about what people here think about my music because I think they have better taste than anyone else in the world,
Well, yeah. Amazing. And finally, I wanted to ask about the amazing paintings you've been auctioning off to raise money for abortion funds. Why was it so important to you to do something like this?
There's the personal answer and then the professional answer. The personal one is obviously I've had a very long-standing journey with reproductive health, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, to the point where I'm best friends with my gynecologist, which most people probably aren't, but I am. And, obviously I felt personally compelled, but, with this show in particular, I have a song called Nightmare that I put out a couple years ago, and it coincidentally came out around the same time as an abortion repeal in the US and a global gag rule repeal. And so it was really interesting thing that happened is that some people were saying to me, wow, you couldn't have timed this more perfectly. How did you know you were going to put out this angry feminist anthem and then this was going to happen? Who could have thought? And I kind of wanted to say to those people, the reality is that I could have put that song out any month of any year and something probably would have happened that would have been an attack on, reproductive health and reproductive rights. And it would have just seemed the same amount of serendipitous because, there wasn't an isolated incident. It's an ongoing conversation. So in its own way, this song kind of became this anthem, I think. When I started my tour, I had statistics in my set that were about abortion and about the state of legislation in the United States. And about 2 weeks into my tour, the Supreme Court ruling was confirmed, and I had to change those statistics on about 10 minutes notice, at a sound check before a show. And that like section of the tour was really difficult for me, because I would always get like really emotional during the song, and like night by night it was a different emotion. Like sometimes I'd be enraged, sometimes I would just be crying. I would just feel so sad. Like I would look into the audience and I would look at people and I would think about the statistics, and I would go, you know, the reality is that I'm looking at this group of people, and some of these faces I'm staring at right now are going to be severely, negatively, or fatally affected by, you know, the effects of this. And I just kind of implored my audience to like look around, look at the magnitude of the space that they were in, and recognize that like it's not a hypothetical. It's something that is continuously affecting the people you're sharing a space with, to the left and the right of you. It's not, you know, it's not hypothetical girls and boys that your mom and dad tell you about when you're a kid, you know, that they're bad and they do this and you'll never do that. So I kind of needed to find a way to match that rage and that negativity with like actual action. And you know, coincidentally enough, I do the paintings during a song called Be Kind, you know, which is arguably one of the most like reductive songs in my set, because it's just so simple. It's just be kind. It's probably the most like digestible message of a Halsey song ever. You know, but it felt the most appropriate. And so people started taking an interest in wanting to buy the paintings, and I had no intention of selling them originally. They were just supposed to be part of the show. And we kind of put our heads together and decided it would be really good to auction them off for abortion funds and networks that help people. And they ended up in Sotheby's, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I was a little panicked about that, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm like a fine artist at heart, and I really was like, if you told me I was gonna have like a show or an auction up at Sotheby's, I would have been like, okay, well, I'm gonna work on it for 10 years then, and it's never gonna be done, and I'm gonna be so nervous about it. And then here these paintings I did in like 10 seconds on stage are going up in this auction with like Warhols. That was like kind of, I had to get over that like moment of panic to be like, it's for a good cause. Because my initial reaction as an artist was like, oh my God, these paintings cannot be up here in this gallery. I did not spend enough time on them. But the response was like, was really incredible, and it was really cool, and I'm really glad that I did it. Yeah.
Because obviously it is pretty bleak out there, and it's really scary. But does the response of your fans to things like this make you maybe a bit more hopeful for the future?
100%. 100%. And not even just the response, it's just like, you know, because it goes beyond blind rage, and my fans do a really good job of keeping themselves really educated. One of the things we did at the shows was in every city, you know, it was kind of about saying the names of these legislators out loud, saying the names of the politician. You know, this isn't an imaginary bad guy. These are people who live in your cities and in your counties and in your states, and remember their names so that if they come up for re-election when you're old enough to vote or you're accessible to vote, you remember their name and go, no, screw that dude. I remember what he did a couple years ago, especially because in the States, you know, politicians have an incredible way of shape-shifting through their, you know, their beliefs, where someone can run on a platform that they were like staunchly against years ago. So I think it was more for me like trying to like sear those names in this moment into their minds. And I really didn't have to do much, because they're just like, they're so educated and so autonomous, and it's really, really wonderful to see. It's also great to see globally, you know? I think that my fans all over the world like have a really strong network where they're supporting people in other countries, you know, when similar things happen overseas, you know? So I'm just really proud of them. I think they're awesome. Like, I hope every kid grows up to be like one of my fans, because they're all sick. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful to talk.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Sorry I talk so much. I always do this. My God. I didn't let you get a word in edgewise. Anyway, thank you for having me. Can't wait for Reading Leeds.